Samantha. Jacob.
Here.
Alisa.
Here.
Kathleen.
Here.
Kaylin.
Here.
Elizabeth. William. Michaela. Okay. And if you have to miss a class, and do let me know, in advance, at least try. And if you could not, tell me afterwards why you missed that class, okay? Because I do remember who was not here, who was here. Sierra.
Here.
Kiana.
Here.
Your name is so similar. It's really hard. Olivia.
Here.
Elaine. Carly. Christine. Not here. Christine not here. Anna. Anthony. Jada.
Here.
And Sarah is here. There's some bad languages in this video. So, but just want to be aware of that. But that's not.
Is it? It's a different video?
It's a different one.
Oh, okay.
It's a different one, yeah. I really encourage you to read these books if you have not done so, and there's Freakonomics, and also there's another one afterwards, it's Super Freakonomics. Both books are wonderful books, Okay, so this is it. Let's just have a look.
Well, from day one, I presented our gameplay team with what I thought was almost an impossible task, and that was to make our game
You'll be happy to know that I'll be talking not about my own tragedy, but other people's tragedy. It's a lot easier to be lighthearted about other people's tragedy than your own, and I want to keep in the spirit of the conference. So if you believe the media accounts, being a drug dealer in the height of the crack cocaine epidemic was a very glamorous life, in the words of Virginia Pastrell. There was money, there was drugs, guns, women, you name it, jewelry, bling bling, it had it all. Okay? What I'm here to tell you today is that, in fact, based on 10 years of research, a unique opportunity to go inside a gang, to see the actual books, the financial records of the gang, that the answer turns out not to be that being in the gang was a glamorous life, but I think more realistically, that being in a gang, selling drugs for a gang, is perhaps the worst job in all of America. And that's what I'd like to convince you of today. Okay, so there are three things I want to do. First, I want to explain how and why crack cocaine had such a profound influence on inner city gangs. Secondly, I I want to tell you how somebody like me came to be able to see the inner workings of a gang. It's an interesting story, I think. And then third, I want to tell you in a very superficial way about some of the things we found when we actually got to look at the financial records, the books of the gang. Okay, so before I do that, just one warning, which is that this presentation has been rated R by the Motion Picture Association of America. It contains adult themes, adult language. Given who's up on the stage, you'll be delighted to know that in fact there'll be no nudity, barring a unexpected wardrobe malfunctions aside. Okay, so let me start by talking about crack cocaine and how it transformed the gang. Okay, and to do that, you have to actually go back to a time before crack cocaine in the early 80s and look at it from the perspective of a gang leader. Okay, so being a gang leader in the inner city wasn't such a bad deal in the mid-'80s, the early 80s, let me say. Now, you had a lot of power, you got to beat people up, you got a lot of prestige, a lot of respect. But the thing is, there was no money in it. Okay, the gang had no way to make money. You couldn't charge dues to the people in the gang because the people in the gang didn't have any money. You couldn't really make any money selling marijuana. Marijuana's too cheap, it turns out. There's just no market for being, you can't get rich selling marijuana. You couldn't sell cocaine. You know, cocaine's a great product, powder cocaine, but you gotta know rich white people. And most of the inner city gang members didn't know any rich white people, they couldn't sell that market. You couldn't really do petty crime either. It turns out petty crime's a terrible way to make a living. So as a result, as a gang leader, you had, you know, power, it's a pretty good life, but the thing was, in the end, you were living at home with your mother. And so it wasn't really a career. There was something that, it's just there were limits to how powerful and important you could be if you had to live at home with your mother. Okay. Then along comes crack cocaine. Okay? And in the words of Malcolm Gladwell, crack cocaine was the extra chunky version of tomato sauce for the inner city. Okay? Because crack cocaine was an unbelievable innovation. I don't have time to talk about it today. But if you think about it, I would say that in the last 25 years, of every invention or innovation that's occurred in this country, the biggest one in terms of impact on the well-being of people who live in the inner city was crack cocaine. Okay, it's for the worse, not for the better, but for the worse. It had a huge impact on life. So what was it about crack cocaine? It was a brilliant way of getting the brain high. Okay, because you could smoke crack cocaine and you can smoke crack cocaine, you can't smoke powder cocaine, and smoking is a much more efficient mechanism of delivering a high than it is snorting it. And it turned out there was this audience that didn't know it wanted crack cocaine, but when it came, it really did. And it was a perfect drug you could sell buy the cocaine that went in for $1, sell it for $5, highly addictive. The high was very short. So for 15 minutes, you get this great high. And then when you come down, all you want to do is get high again. Okay, created a wonderful market. And for the people who were there running the gang, it was a great way, seemingly, to make a lot of money, at least for the people on the top. Okay, so this is where we enter the picture. Not really me. I'm really a big player in all this. My co-author, Sudhir Venkatesh, is the main character. Okay, so he was a math major in college who had a good heart, decided he wanted to get a sociology PhD, came to the University of Chicago. So the 3 months before he came to Chicago, he had spent following the Grateful Dead. And in his own words, he looked like a freak. Okay, he's a South Asian, very dark-skinned South Asian, big man, and he had hair, in his words, down to his ass. Okay, defied all kinds of boundaries. Was he black or white? Was he man or woman? It was really a curious sight to be seen. So he showed up at the University of Chicago, and the famous sociologist William Julius Wilson was doing a book that involved surveying people all across Chicago. And he took one look at Sudhir, who was going to go do some surveys for him, and decided he knew exactly the place to send him, which was to one of the toughest, most notorious housing projects, not just in Chicago, but in the entire United States. So Sudhir, the suburban boy who never really been in the inner city, dutifully took his clipboard and, walked down to this housing project, gets to the first building. The first building, well, there's nobody there, but he hears some voices up in the stairwell. So he climbs up the stairwell, and he comes around the corner and finds a group of young African-American men playing dice. Okay, this is about 1990, peak of the crack epidemic. This is a very dangerous job being in a gang. You don't like to be surprised. You don't like to be surprised by people coming around the corner. And the mantra was, shoot first, ask questions later. Okay. Now, Sudhir was lucky. He was such a freak, and that clipboard probably saved his life because he figured no other rival gang member would be coming up to shoot at them with a clipboard. So his greeting was not particularly warm, but they did say, well, okay, let's hear your questions on your survey. So I kid you not, the first question on the survey that he was sent to ask was, how do you feel about being board locked? Makes you wonder about academics, okay? Well, so the choice of answers were very good. Good. Yeah, very good. What Sudhir found out is, in fact, that the real answer was the following. The survey was not, in the end, going to be what got Sudhir off the hook. He was held hostage overnight in the stairwell. There was a lot of gunfire. There were a lot of philosophical discussions he had with the gang members. By morning, the gang leader arrived, checked out Sudhir, decided he wasn't no threat, and they'd let him go home. So Sudhir went home, took a shower, took a nap, and you and I, probably faced with this situation, would think, well, I guess I'm going to write my dissertation on the Grateful Dead. I've been following for the last 3 months. Sudhir, on the other hand, got right back, walked down to the housing project, went up to the floor, the second floor, and said, hey guys, I had so much fun hanging out with you last night, I wonder if I could do it again tonight. And that was the beginning, what turned out to be a beautiful relationship that involved Sudhir living in the housing project on and off for 10 years, hanging out in crack houses, going to jail with the gang members, having the car window shot out of his car, having the police break into his apartment, steal his computer disks, you name it. But ultimately the story has a happy ending for Sudhir, who became one of the most respected sociologists in the country, and especially for me, as I sat in my office with my Excel spreadsheet open, waiting for Sudhir to come and deliver to me the latest load of data that he would get from the game. It was one of the most unequal co-authoring relationships ever, but I was glad to be the beneficiary of it. Okay, so what do we find? What do we find in the gang? Well, let me say one thing. So what we really got access to everybody in the gang. We got an inside look at the gang from the very bottom up to the very top. They trusted Sudhir in ways that really no academic has ever, or really anybody, any outsider has ever earned the trust of these gangs. To the point where they actually opened up what was most interesting for me is their books, their financial records that they kept, and they made them available to us. And we not only could study them, but we could ask them questions about what was in them. So if I have to kind of summarize very quickly in the short time I have, what the sort of the bottom line of what I take away from the gang is that if I had to draw a parallel between the gang and any other organization, it would be that the gang is just like McDonald's, okay? In a lot of different respects, the restaurant McDonald's. Okay, so first, in one way, which isn't maybe the most interesting way, but it's a good way to start, is in the way it's organized, the hierarchy of game, the way it looks. So here's what the org chart of the gang looks like. I don't know if any of you know very much about org charts, but if you were to kind of strip down and simplify McDonald's org chart, this is exactly what the org chart would look like. Now, it's amazing, but the top level of the gang, they actually call themselves the board of directors, okay? And as Sudhir says, it's not like these guys had a very sophisticated kind of view of like what happened in American corporate life, but they had seen movies like Wall Street, and they kind of had learned like a little bit about what it was like to be in the real world. Now, below that board of directors, you've got essentially what are regional VPs, people who control, say, the south side of Chicago, or the west side of Chicago. Now, Sudhir got to know very well the guy who had the unfortunate assignment of trying to take the Iowa franchise, which it turned out for this black gang was not one of the more brilliant financial endeavors that they undertook. Okay, but the thing that really makes the gang seem like McDonald's, it's its franchisees. The guys who are running, the local gangs, the 4 square block by 4 square block areas, they're just like the guys, in some sense, who are running the McDonald's. They are the entrepreneurs. They get the exclusive property rights to control the drug selling. They get the name of the gang behind them for merchandising and marketing. And they're the ones who basically make the profit or lose the profit depending on how good they are at running the business. Now, the group I really want you to think about, though, are the ones at the bottom, the foot soldiers. Okay, these are the teenagers typically who'd be standing out on the street corners selling the drugs. Extremely dangerous work. And important to note that almost all of the weight, all of the people in this organization are at the bottom. Okay, just like McDonald's. So in some sense, the foot soldiers are a lot like the people who are taking the order at McDonald's. And indeed, it's not just by chance that they're like them. In fact, in these neighborhoods, they'd be the same people. So the same kids who were working in the gang were actually, at the very same time, they would typically be working part-time at a place like McDonald's. Okay, which already, I think, foreshadows the main result that I've talked about what a crappy job it was being in the gang. Because obviously, if being in the gang was such a wonderful, lucrative job, why in the world would these guys moonlight at McDonald's? Okay, so what do the wages look like? So you might be surprised, but based on the actual, being able to talk to them and to see their records, this is what it looks like in terms of the wages. The hourly wage the foot soldiers were earning was $3.50 an hour. It was below the minimum wage. Okay, and this is well documented. It's easy to see by the patterns of consumption they have. It really is not fiction, it's fact. There was very little money in the gang, especially at the bottom. Now, if you manage to rise up, say, be that local leader, the guy who's equivalent of the McDonald's franchisee, you'd be making $100,000 a year. And that, in some ways, was the best job you could hope to get if you were growing up in one of these neighborhoods as a young black male. If you managed to rise to the very top, $200,000 or $400,000 a year is what you'd hope to make. Truly, you would be a great success story. And one of the sad parts of this is that, indeed, among the many other ramifications of crack cocaine, is that the most talented individuals in these communities, this is what they were striving for. They weren't trying to make it in legitimate ways because there were no legitimate channels out. This was the best way out. And it actually was the right choice, probably, to try to make it out this way. You look at this, the relationship with McDonald's breaks down here. The money looks about the same. Why is it such a bad job? Well, the reason it's such a bad job is that there's somebody shooting at you a lot of the time. Okay, so we're shooting at you. What are the death rates? Okay, we found in our gang, and admittedly, this was not really sort of a standard situation. This was a game of a time of intense violence, of a lot of gang wars. As this gang actually became quite successful, but there were costs, and so the death rate, not to mention the rate of being arrested, sent to prison, being wounded, the death rate in our sample was 7% per person per year. You're in the gang for 4 years. You expect to die with about a 25% likelihood. Okay, that is about as high as you can get. So just for comparison's purposes, let's think about some other walk of life where you may expect might be extremely risky. Like let's say that you were a murderer and you were convicted of murder and you're sent to death row. Turns out the death rates on death row from all causes, including execution, 2% a year. Okay, so it's a lot safer being on death row than it is selling drugs out on the street, okay? That makes you pause, gives you some pause, those of you who believe that the death penalty is going to have an enormous deterrent effect on crime. Now, to give you a sense of just how bad the inner city was during crack, and I'm not really talking about, I'm not really focusing on the negatives, but really there's another story to tell you there. If you look at the death rates just of random young black males growing up in the inner city in the United States, the death rates during crack were about 1%. That's extremely high. This is violent death. It's unbelievable in some sense. To put it into perspective, if you compare this to the soldiers in Iraq, for instance, right now, fighting the war, 0.5%. So in some very literal way, the young black men who were growing up in this country were living in a war zone, very much in the sense of the way that the soldiers over in Iraq are fighting in a war. Okay, so why in the world, you might ask, would anybody be willing to stand out on the street corner selling drugs for $3.50 an hour with a 25% chance of dying over the next 4 years? Why would they do that? Okay, and I think there are a couple answers. I think the first one is that they got fooled by history. It used to be the gang was a rite of passage, that the young people controlled the gang, that as you got older, you dropped out of the gang. Okay? So what happened was the people who happened to be in the right place at the right time, the people who happened to be leading the gang in the mid to late 80s became very, very wealthy. And so the logical thing to think was that, well, the next generation, so they're going to age out of the gang like everybody else has, and the next generation is going to take over and get the wealth, okay? So there are striking similarities, I think, to the internet boom, right? The first set of people in Silicon Valley got very, very rich. And then all my friends said, maybe I should go do that too. And they were willing to work very cheap for stock options that never came, okay? In some sense, that's what happened exactly to the set of people we were looking at, is that they were willing to start at the bottom, just like, say, a lawyer at a law firm. A first-year lawyer is willing to start at the bottom, work 80-hour weeks for not that much money, because they think they're going to make partner. But what happened was, the rules changed, and they never got to make partner. Indeed, the same people who were running all of the major gangs in the late 1980s are still running the major gangs in Chicago today. They never passed on any of the wealth, so everybody got stuck at that $3.50 an hour job, and it turned out to be a disaster. The other thing the gang was very, very good at was marketing and trickery. And so, for instance, one thing the gang would do is, the gang leaders would have big entourages, and they drive fancy cars and have fancy jewelry. So what Sedera eventually realized as he hung out with them more is that really, they didn't own those cars, they just leased them, because they couldn't afford to own the fancy cars. And they didn't really have gold jewelry, they had gold-plated jewelry. It goes back to the real versus the fake real. And really, they did all sorts of things to trick the young people into thinking what a great deal the gang was going to be. So for instance, they would give a 14-year-old kid, they'd give him a whole roll of bills to hold. That 14-year-old kid would say, oh, well, he would say to his friends, hey, look at all the money I got in the gang. It wasn't his money until he spent it. And then essentially he was in debt to the gang and was sort of an indentured servant for a while. Okay, so I have a couple minutes. Let me do one last thing I hadn't thought I'd have time to do, which is to talk about what we learn more generally about economics from the study of the gang. Okay, so economists tend to talk in technical words. Often our theories fail quite miserably when we go to the data. But actually what's kind of interesting is that in this setting, it turned out that some of the economic theories that worked not so well in the real economy work very well in the drug economy, in some sense because it's unfettered capitalism. Here's an economic principle. This is one of the basic ideas in labor economics. It's called a compensating differential. It's the idea that basically the incremental wages that a worker requires to leave him indifferent between performing two tasks, one which is more unpleasant than the other, that's what you call a compensating differential. It's why we think garbage men might be paid more than people who work in parks. Okay? So in the words of the gang, one of the members of the gang, I think, makes this clear. So it turns out, I'm sort of getting ahead of myself, it turns out in the gang, when there's a war going on, that they actually pay the foot soldiers twice as much money. Okay, it's exactly this concept, because they're not willing to be at risk. So here's, in the words of the gang member, captures it quite nicely. He says, would you stand around here when all this shit, that means shooting, if all this shit's going on? No, right. So if I'm going to be asked to put my life on the line, then front me the cash, man. So essentially, I think the gang member says it much more articulately than does the economist about what's going on. Here's another one. So economists talk about game theory, that every two-person game has a Nash equilibrium. Here's the translation you get from the gang member. They're talking about the decision of why they don't go shoot. One thing that turns out to be a great business tactic in the gang, if you go and just shoot in the air, just shoot guns in the other gang's territory, all the people are afraid to go by the guns there, they're going to come into your neighborhood. So, but here's what he says about why they don't do that. He says, if we start shooting around there in the other gang's territory, nobody, and I mean you dig it, nobody going to step on their turf. But we got to be careful, because they can shoot around here too, and then we all fucked. Okay? So that's exactly the same concept. But then again, sometimes economists get it wrong. So one thing we observed in the data is that it looked like, in terms of the gang leader always got paid. Okay, he always, no matter how bad it was economically, he always got himself paid. So we had some theories related to cash flow and lack of access to capital markets and things like that. But then we asked the gang member, well, why is it you always get paid and your workers don't always get paid? His response is, you got all these niggers below you who want your job, you dig? If you start taking losses, they see you as weak and shit. Okay? And I thought about it. I said, CEOs often pay themselves $1 million bonuses even when companies are losing a lot of money. And it never would really occur to economists that this idea of weak and shit could really be important. But maybe weak and shit is an important hypothesis that needs to be learned. Thank you very much.
What if green-eyed ideas weren't cherished? What if they carried no importance?
You guys enjoyed it?
Yes.
All right. Okay. Let's get back to our discussion and continue our discussion and from Tuesday. Okay. So in the last class, and I asked you to use one sentence to summarize and what chapter 6 about. Okay. And then we had some discussion, and you watched 2 videos, and I want you use another sentence to summarize actually what you learned so far from this chapter and from the videos you have watched. One sentence, complete sentence, not too long. Go ahead and please.
I learned how the drug market works and how it relates in some ways and not in others to the real economy.
Very good. Excellent. Blaine?
I learned how dangerous jobs don't have as big as payoffs as you think they do, or as the general public thinks they do.
Okay. Great. Others?
I learned that the negatives of the drug industry don't necessarily outweigh the positives.
Okay, very good. Everybody.
I learned that prostitution could actually be like a serious market where people make money because that girl made $250,000 a year.
That's right. Okay, good. One sentence. Okay.
Yeah, I kind of learned that my ideas about prostitution and drug-related or gang-related industries were actually flip-flopped because I figured prostitution would be much worse. Well, not much worse, but would be just as bad as the drug-related industries, whereas it's actually not. It's not. According to some people, it's not as bad as selling drugs in a gang.
One sentence. Okay, one sentence. Try to make it one sentence. Others. You ready?
I learned that individuals in these industries will do whatever it takes to keep their business going.
Okay, good. Okay, others?
I learned even if the company's failing, the CEO or like the lead person will try to take money out to help keep themselves afloat.
Okay, good.
I learned that gangs have like a set economic structure.
Say it again, I could not hear.
I learned that gangs have a set economic structure.
Okay, like a McDonald's. Others? Okay. Others? One sentence. Okay, again, this class is about thinking and speaking, analyzing. Okay. So what do you think?
Good and
I'm asking her. What do you think?
I learned that like a lot of the drug business like is a lot more detailed than like us like as being like regular society even know about. They have a lot more going on.
Okay.
When things are illegal, sometimes it's some certain people, the desire to do those things very stronger and they want to do it more.
Okay. Others? Okay. All right. So I'm going to ask you more questions based on the material in this chapter. Okay. And then you're free to answer or talk about your views and opinions about things related to this chapter. First question. What does making a good illegal good supplies?
Could you repeat that?
Okay. What does making a good illegal raise the price? So what if
When you make a drug illegal, it kind of
okay, when you say something's illegal, it's kind of like almost like you're I can consider it like you're daring somebody. It's like you can no longer do this, and if you get caught, you're gonna go to jail. And for people who like a thrill in their life, it's like, why do people steal and stuff like that? They want a thrill. So when something becomes illegal, they want a thrill. So therefore, they'll be willing to pay more money and everything to deal with it. And plus, and also tacking on to that, if it's illegal, there's a high risk of people who selling it are going to get in trouble. So it's going to raise the prices on that as well.
Okay. Good.
It also raises the input cost because it's harder to get a hold of materials.
Okay. So Wendy, go ahead.
You also have to pay for like extra security and like places to be able to make it and hide it, and without getting caught. Because if it's legal, you can perfectly just like advertise it, like staple a little flyer on a telephone pole. Whereas if it's illegal, that's probably not your best choice.
Okay. So it increases input cost, right? And the input cost is a factor that affects demand or supply. Supply. So supply curve is going to shift to right or left? Right or left. Now the input price is up.
It's going to shift to left.
It's going to shift to the left. So supply is going to shift to the left. This is the demand, this is supply, okay? And now supply curve is going to shift this way, and now look at what happened to the market equilibrium price. Market equilibrium price goes up. Okay, good. Any other thought on this? Carly or Lucy, your hand?
She said exactly what I was going to say.
Okay, good. Okay, so that's the first question. The next one. Why does the transaction of illegal goods often cause violence?
Well, if you're afraid somebody's gonna tell on you, if your business is big enough and you are like that deep in, you're probably gonna try to hurt them, and that's violence. So you wouldn't want them to tell on you. I mean, people get killed over that. So.
Okay, good.
There's no legal recourse for enforcement, so you have to rely on violence.
Right. There's a lack of contractual enforcement. Okay.
And also you adding on to what she said, you never know who's an undercover cop. And who's like working for the police, so you have to be careful who you let in.
If you're going to, every time you have a market, there's going to be competition. And if you have competition, especially over something that's illegal, the best way to solve it is to kill the other competition, right? So that's why you have to have it.
Okay, all right.
There's no like regulation or anything, so if someone's gonna steal from you, you can't just like go to the police. You have to take it into your own hands. So.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say, if someone steals your crack, you can't go to the police and say, he stole my crack.
Yes. Very good. Okay, next one. The efforts of law enforcement has impact on the supply of illegal goods. What are they?
Wait a minute, what?
Okay, the effort of law enforcement has impact on the supply of the illegal goods. And what are those impacts?
So what you're saying is that due to police presence, that the supply is impacted. Okay. And what my answer to that is, you have to charge more to the buyer because of the difficulty and the risk you have of getting in trouble, being thrown in jail, while also you have to have somewhere to make the illegal drug where the police presence is not. And so if that's there, then it also increases the supply.
Good.
Financially.
Good, very good. But I want you guys to think about the economic concept we learned last week. Trying to apply those economic concepts in this context here. We learn opportunity cost, we learn the marginal benefit, marginal cost, we learn all those economic cost concepts. How can you apply those in this context, in this story here?
Well, your marginal cost is where they interact. You gotta, depending on the situation, you got a greater chance of getting caught. And
So what would you say about the marginal cost per transaction when the law enforcement is in place, compared with the scenario when the law enforcement is not in place?
You can get arrested.
So marginal cost is high, okay? And anybody remember what we talked about marginalism? What is marginalism? Go ahead.
It's like additional, so like marginal cost, additional cost, and so it's like, yeah.
Anybody? Sarah?
I just remember additional.
Okay. Go ahead.
It's a comparison between the additional marginal benefit and the additional marginal cost.
And I mentioned that marginalism is the fundamental principle in microeconomics. Why? Anybody remember that?
The marginal cost has to be equal to the marginal benefit.
That's right. The optimal decision lies in when the marginal benefit is equal to marginal cost. Okay, now let's come back to the story here. When law enforcement is in place, the marginal cost goes up. And the gang members, they want to reach their optimal decision too. So if the marginal cost per transaction goes up, what do they have to do to counteract that? The marginal benefit per transaction has to go up as well, right? How do they make the marginal benefit per transaction go up?
Raise the price. They sell more.
There's something else mentioned in the chapter. See, anybody remember that?
They don't use the correct materials. They use different and more dangerous materials to be mixed in with the drugs that are cheaper.
But that's still on the cost side. Yeah, okay. On the cost side, you can transfer into the benefit side. Okay, so I see your point here. Okay, so anybody else?
I was gonna say that, like, in the crack example they had in the book, they would cut it with something else. That way they wouldn't have to pay as much, so their benefit would be higher.
Okay. And somebody else, you were raising your hand? I don't know. Who else? Okay. So marginal cost is higher now. They want to increase the marginal benefit. What did they do? Book mentioned that. What did they do?
Does that have to do with changing the potency?
Yes. Actually, they make it more valuable. Make the products more valuable. Have high potency. So every time when they have a transaction, they make sure the marginal benefit of that transaction is higher than previous. Okay. So you see, there is, economic analysis behind this. So I remember they mentioned they switch to a more valuable version of the produce, and due to law enforcement effort. Okay, so next one. And so we talk about the impact on the supply. How about the impact on the demand of those illegal goods? What are those some of the impact mentioned in the books? The impact on the demand. Remember, demand represents consumers. Okay? So what are some of the impact on the demand? Anybody remember it? You want to try? Sarah?
Well, they said that there was, I'm trying to remember this. There was less, they consumed
Let's talk about the market of the prostitution.
Okay.
How the law enforcement and the affect the consumers of sex.
It depends on which one you're talking about, because in that one where they regulate it.
Good. Go ahead. Yes.
They
in Nevada, right?
Yeah, that one they actually probably even they probably the prices on it probably cost less, but they have more customers because it's safer, because they keep their they keep on their P's and Q's with the prostitutes.
That's right. So that is actually when it's allowed, right? The law has allowed, prostitution, and compared to the place where the law does not allow it, what happened? The sex become very dangerous. Affect the health of the consumers. Okay. So that's in the market of prostitution. How about in the market of drugs and alcohol? What does the book mention here?
It gets dangerous because they start using like different things to make it more potent and like rat poison and stuff like that.
It makes a lot of different things, in drug. It causes a lot of, fatal death. Okay. So that's the impact and the demand on the consumer side. Okay, so you see that, when there's law enforcement in place, both supply and demand is going to shift. Okay, and the supply is more likely it's going to shift to left. You can shift up. What about demand? You think if the demand is going to shift to the left or shift to the right?
Shift to the right.
The right.
Shift to the right. If demand shifts to the right, what does it mean? What does it imply?
It's wanted more.
This means
That's a supply.
higher supply. Higher supply or lower supply? I'm sorry. Higher demand or lower demand? Lower demand, right? And if they know that, they may catch a, sexual transmitted disease, from having sex with someone, their demand probably is going to be less compared with, the area in Nevada, which is allowed, right? So I would say, the demand is going to more likely is going to shift to the left when law enforcement effort is in place, okay? So now let's take a look at this. So demand shift to the left, and the supply also shift to the left. So what can you conclude, or what can you predict about equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity? Let's first say about equilibrium price.
Well, the price will stay the same.
The price.
It looks
price
like
is
the
either
same
way.
right now, okay? But now let me. I'm lowered even further.
Price drops.
Now it's go down, right? Okay. How about I put it here, but I'm going to move supply even further. Hold on, I'm sorry. Now this is the new equilibrium price. This is old one. So now what do you say about equilibrium price? So what can you say about the equilibrium price in this context? It's undetermined. It is undetermined. So yes, because both supply and demand is going to shift down, and depending on the magnitude of the shift, the equilibrium price, the price of the prostitution, the price of the drug, the illegal good may go up, may go down. That is undetermined. But can you conclude about the equilibrium quantity? The quantity consumed. Can you conclude about that? Whether it's going to be bigger or smaller? Based on this graph here, it's going to be smaller for sure. So no matter how much you're going to shift the demand and supply, the consumption is going to be lower. Okay. So that's what you can conclude with this law enforcement effort. It's going to guarantee, you're going to guarantee have a lower consumption, but you're not sure about the price. Okay, good. Any question here? I still have not hear everyone's, speak yet. Okay. By the end of class, I want to hear.
This has like nothing to do with like the topic. Is this class on Tuesdays and Thursdays?
Yes.
Okay, because on my schedule, it doesn't say Tuesdays. Like, my schedule doesn't show that. It only shows on my schedule that this class on
Okay, let's talk about this after class.
Okay.
What's on this? Maybe you're in different class. Maybe you're not registered in this class. But actually, I do have your name, so you should be enrolled in this class. But we can talk about this later. Okay. Any other question related to this concept here? Okay. Next question I'm going to ask you. It's, what do you think the opportunity cost of law enforcement efforts on illegal goods?
They could be doing other things with their time, like in different areas, instead of trying to monitor and watch drug trafficking.
Okay, good.
It could be hard for them because it can be dangerous for the officers trying to go in and like have drug busts and stuff. Like it could be dangerous. Like it could cost their
The
life.
risk of their life,
Yes.
right? Etc. But if you become police, that's kind of risk you have to bear
Right.
anyway, right? Yeah. Okay. Others? The opportunity cost of law enforcement effort on illegal goods. Who raised your hand?
I'm thinking that like if they're spending more time on illegal goods, then there's other things that they have to neglect that may be more important.
That's right. They could use their time and money and to do, and try to do something else. Good, Blaine.
I was gonna say that, I don't know if you were getting there, but I was gonna say that an opportunity cost for, the drug dealers with the police presence, would be that they would they wouldn't have to be so violent because of the police presence. They feel like they have to keep what's theirs, and try to shade away from the police presence. So by doing that, they become more violent.
I see. So you think there's a chance that,
That
more
if
violence.
the police would pull back, that maybe there would be less violence.
Okay,
Just to,
I see. Okay, and I think that is true. More violence, or they may sharpen their skills.
Right.
Being the criminals. Yeah. Okay. Others?
I would think that if the law enforcement did pull back, it would almost be like a victory, so to speak, for the drug dealers. So now they're feeling like, we're better than them, we're bigger than them, so they might become more violent, so they can take over everything.
Maybe they may be able to expand their scale of production.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Anything else here? Okay. What do you feel about the cost and the benefit of legalizing marijuana? That's very controversial issue, right? Okay.
Which one would you like to talk about, cost or benefit? Or both?
Either one, whatever.
Okay. A benefit would be that since it is a big market, that we could tax it. And a cost of it would be that some people that weren't on it before, since it's legal, it wouldn't have a moral cost to them, so they would try it anyways.
The emotional cost is goes down. Yeah.
I think that it would take police officers could have focus their time at other places instead of having to focus on people smoking and trying to get people like that, and they can go to other crimes. And I think that was benefit, and then the cost. I more people would do it, and so there'd be people are gonna start trying to drive it would make roads unsafe if they try to drive like that and stuff like that.
I kind of agree with him because with it being illegal like that, well, technically the government's kind of losing out on money because they can't put a tax on it. Which if they did, they'll make so much more money just because they can't actually tax it, and it's kind of affecting, I guess, regular taxpayers because when you take these people and you incarcerate them, you're putting them in jail, but you're having to spend millions of dollars just to have them incarcerated.
So the cost on both sides, right?
Yeah. So it's kind of it's okay for it's not okay for us because we're putting our tax money into the jail system, but at the same time, the government's losing out on money too because they could be taxing and making probably almost double what they're making now.
Like she was saying, our tax money is going into overcrowded jails with people who are just in there for having marijuana, which isn't as bad as people who do child pornography and stuff like that. But another thing is if they make it legal, then the possibility of somebody creating something like marijuana but better and different is going to be illegal. So that's going to be another thing that they start selling, and people are going to want that instead of the legal marijuana.
I think that the only thing that a benefit to legalizing marijuana could be, if you're gonna do that, to find a way to, I know it sounds like controversial, but to employ the drug dealers that you would be putting out of business. Because if you just legalize it and they're just there with, now they've lost their business, then they're just gonna go and find something else that's illegal to profit on. So I think by legalizing it to optimize profitability would be to like educate these drug dealers whose business we're gonna be taking away and find some way to employ them so that they just don't go off and become destructive some other way.
Well, the drug dealers won't necessarily be unemployed because in the few places that have like legalized marijuana, like getting it from a dispensary is still really expensive, so a lot of people like still go to the drug dealers. So I think if you establish kind of a market where you can buy for regular people and from like government establishments, like you can still like keep the old like economy going while still like profiting off of regulating it.
Okay. I feel like it's kind of getting worse just because I just feel like the more they leave it like being illegal, the more people are gonna just do it, just because some people just like having that like adrenaline rush of being able to get away with it. And I feel like if they like legalize it, then it kind of just like mellows out because now it's legal, so now no one cares because now it's not a joy anymore. It's just like, oh, okay, well now I can just go casually smoke just walking down the street. When now that it's like illegal, like you have to like go out and find it, like you have to put in more effort. So I just feel like it would be better if you just legalize it because it just makes a lot of things just so much easier.
I think one of the marginal benefit, or one of them that you're getting out, is that unfortunately if you legalize it, the health problems that come with marijuana and that come with all these other drugs are probably going to become more prevalent because it's advertised and all this stuff. So that a benefit would be, sure, the economy may take a hit or may do better, increase, because you're taxing a product and you're making money and employing people, and sure, but the cost is that the human health is definitely going to deteriorate if the people get wind of this, and you have people that were scared of marijuana because it was illegal. Now it's legal and they're like, okay, it's not that right, or I can put money into it in fear that I won't get arrested.
Okay, interesting. Go ahead.
But at the same time, people who choose to do drugs, who are particularly serious about it, and addicted to it, they're gonna do it whether it's legal or not. So if it's legal, then they can at least seek medical help without having to worry about like legal issues along with that. Like the same with legalizing prostitution, because then people can seek medical and even like legal help without fear of persecution.
I think that the medical problems that could come with smoking marijuana aren't really like as bad as like the medical problems that it could help. Like marijuana could help people that have MS or whatever like that, something like that. Marijuana can help people that have cancer and like all that kind of stuff. So I feel like it would be alright.
Yeah, I agree with what she's saying, because there would be a really big marginal benefit, because it's, like people said we can tax it, but that's not the only thing. It has, like, benefits for like the medical industry, because it can help a lot of people as, like, a painkiller and stuff for cancer patients or epilepsy, and, you know, the government can make a lot of money off of it, and we can stop pouring so much money into, like, the war on drugs and putting people in jail for, like, petty crimes.
And another thing that, tacking on to what he said about the medical problems and all, some of the things that we got out there that's legal, like tobacco and alcohol, it's just as bad as marijuana when it comes to that, as far as the the side effects can go, because there's some terrible stuff that that can happen to you when you smoke tobacco and all, but it's legal and people do it all the time.
Yes, actually, I'm gonna ask that question too. You know, why tobacco is legal but marijuana is not? You know, that's one of the last questions in the book, right? You're gonna say something, Blaine?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask whether the question was what's the benefit cost between marijuana, like recreational use, or medical, because there's benefits and costs to each specific one. Because I'm a nice guy, but I wouldn't want anyone to hurt that doesn't need to be hurting or in pain or whatever. But on the other hand, you know, I see our society as one that like should be increasing in wealth and knowledge, and I see that if more drugs, and it's already bad enough, like alcohol and nicotine and all this stuff, obviously very negative impact in America, except for the people that are making bank off of it. If you add another one, then I feel like it's just the same process of, you know, people can make whatever decisions they want, but as a society in a whole, you're just another cost is just where we could be going as a society is going to decrease because there's just more and more pressure on negative impacts of drugs and alcohol.
Okay. Deep thought.
I was just gonna say, just to tag on to what they said, like, the medical industry would definitely improve because I'm not gonna say it would improve, but you haven't heard of cases of people dying from marijuana. You just haven't. Like, that's just not what you hear. If anything, you hear people say it actually helps them, it relaxes them. People who, you know, have insomnia, people who are just, I'm not gonna say crazy, but could have mental problems, like it kind of calms them down. So in a sense, like, it technically is more beneficial than anything else. And not everyone feels like that, but it's not necessarily bad. I mean, it's just, it's better. I feel like, in my personal opinion, it's better than having like tobacco products or something like that.
I was just gonna say that I agree with her, but I can also understand like how some people feel like marijuana is like could cause many medical issues, but I feel like the government is going to ban marijuana, which is just, I feel, a socially banned drug. Then they should also ban the drugs that actually do hurt you. Like she said, nobody has died from marijuana, so I don't feel like it should be like a ban for like medical reasons, stuff like that.
I agree with what she was saying about how like it helps people, like it even helps people with like ADHD. But then again, like if they legalize it, it's still a choice to do it. Like just because it's legal now, like it doesn't mean like everyone has to do it. So if people are against it, they don't have to go do it. Like it should be like legal so people who need it can get it. But if even then, like people still don't have to do it if they're against it. It's a choice.
Actually, it affects the people on the margin, the people who wanted to do but because they were illegal could not do, and only affect the people. Okay. So now talking about tobacco, why tobacco is legal?
Because it makes the government a ton of money, and no matter how many people see like smoking kills you, they still smoke. I mean, you see people smoking all over campus, all over everywhere. So it doesn't matter how much people are like, that's gonna kill you. They don't care. They will still smoke. So the government's not gonna take away $1 billion industry just because people choose to do it, and that's what harms them.
It's not illegal because people have been smoking for hundreds of years, and people can like make their own cigarettes and everything else. So there's really no way to stop it.
Difficulty to stop. Yeah.
I definitely agree with her. Because like it is such a big industry. Any gas station or grocery store you walk in, like most times like a whole shelf just filled with like tobacco products, like just cigarettes, Black & Milds, Rellos, like it's just everything. So I just feel like it would hurt the government a lot more to take all of it away than if they just left it. And I mean, yeah, you see commercial all the time of people who have cancer and people dying from all this stuff, but it's just like, you'll be all right. It's your choice to smoke it or not. So, and I mean, it is a choice because some people just don't believe in it, but at the end of the day, I mean, it's up to you. You know the risk that you're taking, so that's your personal preference.
Well, that would be very hard to stop because it's like crack cocaine and stuff and cocaine in general, opiates came from like overseas to America, and they were legally like prescribed whenever they first got here, and then they were taken away, and you see the problem we have now with it. So if they try to stop it, won't really do much.
What's our history?
Also, I mean, it's just been a social norm, like as she said, for hundreds of years. And, I mean, like, other than the fact that it makes so much money a year, that didn't make any sense. But, it's just like, it's been a part of society for a very long time, and it's really just like a recent thing that smoking is dangerous for you. So, people who already are addicted to it, and like older people who lived like before it really like was this dangerous thing. I mean, it's just been part of their lives for so long. If they were to like suddenly take it away, they would be like they couldn't live without it.
Marginal cost is too high.
Like the prices have gone up with cigarettes, so I feel like either the government's trying to make less people smoke them, or less people are buying them because the cost has had to go up because less people are buying them. So I feel like eventually, like they're just gonna fade away because people have realized that it's not healthy.
And they have introduced all those vape things, so a lot of people convert. So
easy.
I also think because it made a mention in one of the articles, don't remember which one it was, might have been in the book, but it said that tobacco was the most addictive thing, like as far as drug goes, that we got. And I think if they all of a sudden just said, all right, you can't do it anymore, that would be an exponential rise in violence and like crimes and stuff like that, because where people got addicted to it, now they can't just go buy it.
You have to go to the black market.
Yeah, that and people going through withdrawals, and it'll make them crazy.
That's right. That is maybe a huge consequence of that. One more.
Just because a lot of people there are people out here who actually like depend on like cigarettes and like blacks, like that's what they do all day. Like they smoke packs and packs. So like a lot of people, they really just depend. Like no matter, even if you do raise the cost or no matter that's what you're pretty much living off. You don't care. They're still gonna buy it no matter what. So some people just have to have they feel like they have to have it, and some people just been smoking so long, like that's just natural to them. So they don't really care.
Okay, one to discussion here.
A Chinese man recently discovered.
Chinese man recently discovered what? Okay, so let's see. We have a few minutes here. I want to go. We're going to cover some of the questions at the end of the chapter. Okay, so question 3. The federal government can currently, you have the book, right? And tax alcohol on the basis of 100 proof gallon. Okay. How would alcohol consumption patterns change if the government taxed alcohol strictly on the basis of volume rather than also taking its potency into account? Jacob.
Well, alcohol companies would be more worried about making like more potent stuff because it sells for more, so they'd be making less money if they just made beer.
Okay, so the potency will, Sarah?
I think people's consumption, they would consume more potent because it's cheaper. They can get drunk faster for less money.
That's right. So imagine the benefit is higher. Yes. Good. Okay. Let's move on to the next question. In question 4, during prohibition, some speakeasy operators paid bribes to ensure that police did not raid them. Would this affect the quality of liquor served in such Is it to be higher or lower in those that do not pay bribes? Do you expect to find a difference between the customers patronizing the two types of street? I want you to think about the supply and demand concept when you answer this question. Okay?
The speakeasies that took bribes, they would like be known as like safer to go to because well if they're paying off the cops to leave them alone, then you can go in there and don't have to worry about it. So I think like the demand for those would be higher, and that their supply they would have a better quality supply because they'll have more of the demand, and I think that the people that actually go there would be more of the higher class rich people.
Okay.
And because if you're rich and like out and your face is out there, you don't want to be caught in a raid.
Okay. Alexis was raising your hand, but now.
Oh, she pretty much.
Okay, so what to do? Blaine.
I was just gonna say that also the operators that are paying the bribes are maybe spending more money on paying bribes to the cops than on their alcohol and the actual alcohol. And so if they're doing that, then it may be the quality of the liquor, it may be less because they're putting more of their resources into making sure the cops don't get it so that they can make it cheaper, but they can use cheaper resources.
Okay. The one thing I want to mention here is, okay, let's use the graph. So before doing the bribes, this is the supply, this is the demand, right? Okay. If they do pay the bribes, which one is going to be affected?
The supply.
The supplies. How the supply is going to be affected?
It's gonna have to go down and like both quality and quantity really.
Which one? And which way? It should be the supply, right? And it should goes to the left. But I want you to think about it. Okay. Now, yes, supply has decreased, but there's something different between this scenario and this scenario here. Because now, those operators do not have to worry about being caught easily. So there's less risk and there's less cost. So there is some cost actually embedded in this original situation. So if this is the original situation without consideration of that risk and that cost of trying to get away from the police, then I would say the actual cost, actual supply curve, and should be somewhere up here. Okay. Should be somewhere here, but we do not know which, but it is up here. You guys follow me here? So this is the one without consideration of the risk of being caught, and this as double prime here is the one that we are taking into consideration of the risk of being caught. Okay, but you want to the operators want to counteract this cost, so they pay the bribes. Okay, because if they pay the bribe, then they can avoid this cost here. So really, in this, in this question, you have this trade-off here. Okay, if you don't pay the bribe, you have to pay the cost of being caught easily. But if you pay the bribe, the risk is lower. So you got to weigh these two costs. Whether the bribe is more expensive or having the risk of being caught is more costly. You compare these two. Okay, so the supply curve, after you pay the bribe, could be higher or lower than this one here. You're not sure. Okay, so that's something that I think underneath this example here and could be neglected. No. Okay, so did we So go ahead, continue with the discussion. Would you expect to find the difference between the customers patronizing the two types?
Well, the one that didn't have, that went to the speakeasy that had to pay bribes. They would probably be more wealthy because they would have to pay more for it, because the speakeasy has to make money to be able to pay those bribes.
Okay. Others?
Plus, wealthier people are probably higher up in like politics and business, and they have, well, not more to lose if they get caught, but like now their reputation is ruined. So, you know, their business or their political party or whatever now has kind of gone down the toilet because now they're caught and they're in prison. So the people, the speakeasies that paid the bribes, as he said, are probably going towards more wealthy people. So that way they don't have to worry about getting caught, and they can feel free to pay as much money as they want to buy their liquor.
Okay, good. Okay. All right, I'm gonna stop here because I will do, but, okay. So next week, we're going to have student presentations. So nobody has volunteered to do it on Tuesday, so which means I'm gonna pick a pair. You want me to pick somebody, or you want to volunteer right now? Your last chance.
I have a question.
Sure.
Do we need to, can we use the book as a foundation for this?
Sure, sure.
Okay, so we
Yeah,
can use it.
like what I'm doing. You know, you prepare some questions for the discussion, then you just leave. You know, but you have to be very familiar with the materials. Yeah. So you guys want to do it? Frankie. Tuesday, Frankie, you want to do it? Okay, very good. So, yeah, talk to me after class, you know, and I'm going to show you, you know, what are the materials you might want to consider as. Okay, and also remember I told you by the end of this week, you need to let me know who your parents are. Okay, are you?